Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the virtual coffee break with myself and Karina. In today's episode, we're going to discuss Amazon account structure. That involves being either a vendor, a seller, or taking on a hybrid approach. Karina, this is a topic that we can spend many hours discussing. We've got 20 odd minutes. Where do we start?
Yeah, it's a fantastic topic because, as you say, a topic that we can talk about for hours, and a topic that I get asked about, or I get emails, multiple emails a week asking this question. Or it's often a question that businesses ask once they've already made a decision and realized that maybe they should have rethought about that and actually took more time to make that decision on what was right for their business and do a lot more analysis pre-signing up to Amazon.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing to start with is, as you've mentioned, right, when you work with Amazon, you either work with Amazon as a vendor or you work with Amazon as a seller. And there is a key difference between the two. Vendor is basically a wholesale relationship. So you are selling to Amazon. Amazon is your customer. And then Amazon then sell to the end consumer. So that is your relationship. It's a wholesale relationship, like if you were selling to Tesco or you were selling to Walmart. Now, the seller is direct to consumer. So you're using Amazon's platform to sell your products, but effectively you're selling your products direct to the end consumer. So you're taking on a retail position. And so it's very clear for a business to know those key differences, because a lot of the time businesses go, well, should I be one or the other? My question always to them is, well, what's your setup?
Yeah.
Because, it's not really about, should I be one or the other? It's actually, do you have the infrastructure to be one? Because what can happen is some businesses say, oh, we want to be a seller, but they don't have the infrastructure to manage direct to consumer. Or you get some businesses that go, I want to be a vendor, but they don't have the infrastructure to make bulk shipments, sending big shipments to Amazon in pallets or just large quantities, but within Amazon's requirements of how products should be shipped to their fulfillment center.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, if you don't get that right at the beginning of the process, which follows on nicely from our episode 2 about launching a brand on Amazon, you can not only lose a level of momentum, but you can lose an awful lot of time and money trying to change that logistic strategy further down the line. So yeah, if you're a company that is used to selling into retail, then of course the vendor program makes sense. But it's not as easy as that, is it? Because obviously you can't just become a vendor because you decide you want to become one, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is the thing. I mean, you could sit here and go, okay, I've done all this analysis and I want to be a vendor. Then we often know that being a vendor these days is like gold dust, as in, again, the amount of queries I get. I think I'd be a millionaire actually if I could actually do this, but it's like, can you get us a vendor contact, right? And the answer is no, because vendor managers change all the time.
Yeah.
And just because I sort of contact a vendor manager doesn't mean that they're going to respond, because a lot comes into who you are as a brand, and does it make sense for you to be a vendor on the platform? So what really happens, so answer to that question is, you can want to be a vendor, but doesn't mean the golden gates to becoming a vendor are going to be open to you. They can often be shut, and also trying to find a way to make them open can be a challenge.
And let's be honest, the days of when we were at Amazon many moons ago, the vendor program was fairly different from what it is now, both from perks perspective of like the benefits of being a vendor, but also from the level of support you would get from Amazon. How have you seen that change even in the last, never mind the last 5 years, but even the last 2 years?
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I mean, so I was at Amazon as a vendor manager over 8 years ago, and I actually started in 2004. I actually remember the days, this makes me feel old. I remember the days when the catalogue team were on the floor above us, and I'll be uploading a new item setup form, which in all honesty, they look the same. I'd be completing the new item setup form. I'd have an issue. I'd pick up the phone, and one of the guys from the catalogue team would come down, and it could be by my desk and go, "What's up, Karina? What are you having issues with?" And we'd sit there together and upload this template. Next minute, I'm also adding keywords to the back end, keywords that I could add a keyword in and the product appears in search results on page 1 straight away,
Wow.
and
wow. Yeah.
And also adding promotions and just doing everything and having all these meetings with vendors and signing them up and so many different tasks that now are no longer involved.
Yeah.
That real contact with vendor managers, which doesn't exist now, because to be honest, a lot of the tasks that we were doing have now been onboarded for a catalogue team to manage or another different department, because some of them, yes, make sense that really should a vendor manager be dealing with? Probably no, because a lot of those tasks were a lot more administrative. So the role has changed a lot from a vendor manager sort of managing everything to becoming quite an isolated role, where really a vendor manager only deals with the really large accounts that are going to really hit their KPIs effectively and the category revenue. And then when you do deal with that vendor manager, they're limited in what they do, because if it's a task that effectively is managed by the catalogue team, then it's like, well, I'm not answering that question because their knowledge isn't there, because they pass it on to a catalogue team. So it's becomes a lot more isolated now. And I think that frustrates a lot of businesses because they don't have the answers straight away because someone else is doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we see that when speaking to brands in many different marketplaces across different categories, their vendor support has changed, and you kind of hit the nail on the head there that actually a vendor manager now is potentially less knowledgeable than what they were a few years ago, because they don't take on as many tasks. And what we're actually seeing, of course, as you'll know, is that a lot of vendors are being approached by Amazon, and we won't go into detail on this because that's a different topic. And they're basically being flogged what's known as an SVS or an AVS, basically a person that they pay for a lot of money that works on their account part-time or full-time in 1, 3 or 5 countries. And Amazon kind of makes it out that this is fundamental for your success, and if you don't take it on board, then you're essentially going to lose out on the growth momentum. So I think doing your level of research and understanding what comes with being a vendor is crucially important. And one of the kind of questions that I know we get asked quite a lot, and I think you've always got a very good answer for it, is being a vendor easier to then sell your products across multiple marketplaces rather than seller?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and it's a difficult one to answer, because it's all about, and if we use Europe as an example, you've got the European Fulfillment Network. So what often happens, and this is something that vendors aren't aware of, so they think, okay, I'm going to deal with Amazon in the UK. All of a sudden, Amazon starts using that inventory in the UK and listing those products in Germany, France, Italy, and Spain without the vendor knowing, because the vendor's not aware that they've kind of committed to this. And all of a sudden, their products are being sold in other countries. Unfortunately, a lot of those listings are then translated and using automated machines and everything. So it's not like their listings become hugely optimized and look fantastic in other countries, but they then start selling in other countries. Now, this can go in 2 ways. One brand, I have a conversation with one brand and they say, that's fantastic. It means we don't have to do the work, right? We're expanding our product into other countries and, it doesn't require any more resource. But then other brands are like, whoa, we don't want to be in front. We don't want Amazon to do that. We want to decide if we want to go into that country. So that's a great question, in the sense that really then creates this divide between seller and vendor, as in actually you often can't control that on vendor. You can't say to Amazon, don't sell our products in Germany, because it's almost part and parcel of the agreement, this European Fulfillment Network. Unless, of course, you've got a UK plug that's not going to work in Germany. But in most product categories, they'll work. Whereas at least on seller, you can decide if you want your products to be sold in Germany, if you want them in France. And I think that then brings us back to then that next question, that's sort of Europe, but it's all about this control. And I think I would say the biggest thing between this whole vendor and seller, and whether you go with one or the other, and we've discussed about infrastructure, we've discussed about that the golden gates aren't as open as people think on the vendor side, but it's also down to control, because effectively, if you're selling to Amazon on the vendor side, you're passing on that control. They can then sell the products, they own the listings, they sell them at whatever price they want to sell them at. They also can sell them to Germany, they're selling them to other countries. Whereas on the seller, you're controlling, you're owning those listings, you own that retail price, and you own whether or not they should be selling in, you want to sell in those other EU marketplaces, right?
And that's a problem if you're a brand that does care about control, and that's important because not every brand is as precious about that as others. But if you're a D2C brand and you are really obsessed with the customer experience as Amazon is, then if you're sending products to, of course, Germany that have English writing on them, that's a bad customer experience. The customer in Germany or France thinks, well, this company really couldn't be arsed redesigning the packaging for me. So that's quite a tricky one, and I think that you do start then losing that control, and brands maybe aren't aware of that until further down the line. So what in a situation then, let's say you had a seller account and you've been invited to the vendor program, or you have a vendor account, you've been invited straight away, and you're listening to the market and people are talking about hybrid and having both. What's your thoughts on that? I know we can talk about that forever, but is that something that people should do, or is it actually stick with one over the other?
Yeah, again, a lot comes down to setup, and a lot also is down to assortment, because it's always good to spread risk with Amazon. And I think COVID-19 was a prime example where the businesses that got a bit stuck were those that didn't have a backup solution. So, for example, they might have been a vendor and only working with vendor on the in-network fulfillment, which means waiting for getting purchase orders from Amazon and sending inventory to Amazon's fulfillment center. Or there were some sellers that were solely selling on Amazon via FBA. And a lot of those guys got stuck in the non-essential categories. And what it highlighted was actually you need to have more channels of fulfillment. You need to have more options. So a hybrid enables that. But the problem is with a hybrid, and it can work really well, but if you've got one product, it makes it very different, because then there's a question of, okay, you sell that product to Amazon, you sell it on seller, you have to be very careful there, because there's this conflict of interest, as in, you can't start competing on buy box to win the buy box on a listing that you're already selling to Amazon on vendor. So you have to tread carefully and be very clear on what your goal is. Is it to just have a backup solution for inventory if Amazon runs out? Okay. Or is it because you want to start controlling and almost influencing Amazon to raise the price, or Amazon to bring the price down? That's then manipulating. And I think that then goes back almost into this other part of whether or not Amazon support it. Because I always get asked this question, and it's a funny one, because the answer is yes and no. I've spoken to people at Amazon who are dead against the hybrid. I've also spoken to people at Amazon who are really supportive of the hybrid. And a lot of the time it comes down to, why are you going for a hybrid and what's your product range? Because some businesses might have a hybrid because they've got refurbished inventory on seller and they've got other products on vendor. Or the other alternate would be that they have B2B ranges and they have direct to consumer ranges. So they're just mirroring the same way of working that they have, for example, on their website.
And you also see, of course, like some brands, if they have a new product range coming out, they might want to control that for a while.
Exactly.
And they are very price sensitive. Coming back to my margin point in episode 2 last week, where maybe margins are tighter on that new product because they haven't got economies of scale with the stock and things. So they don't really want to sell it to Amazon, who's then playing about with the price and putting the entire new range at risk.
Yeah.
I think it's clear that there's no single universal strategy on Amazon, and it's really important to choose the right model for that kind of critical success.
Yeah.
And it really just does, it does tie back to what type of logistic strategy and distribution strategy are you set up for. But also, I mean, on the vendor side of things, the other important point is that I'm surprised at how many brands get caught up and confused on the negotiations with Amazon when going into a vendor agreement, known as term negotiation. That's another really good point where we see a lot of brands that don't really know what levers and buttons to push and pull and press. And we come across that quite a lot, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Because with the seller side, it's pretty cut and dry. It's you sign up for a seller account and you know what you're signing up to. You sign up to your set of terms. You need to do your analysis to understand what your costs are, the referral fees, if you go FBA, the FBA fees. But really, you can do all of that, and all that information is there in front of you. Yeah, there are a few costs that people get bitten on the butt by, when it comes to refunds and stuff. But on the vendor side, yeah, businesses don't realise that they can negotiate, because a lot of the time businesses get really excited because it comes back to this whole thing of the golden gates. It's like, the golden gates are open for me, for our brand. This is awesome. So then all of a sudden they jump in. Amazon go, well, you need to sign to this contract, this co-op agreement, this and that. And then they're like, yeah, we'll sign up to it. And I don't think they really understand. And then this is what gives vendor almost a bad name, is kind of this... expectations weren't set at the start, or the businesses jumped in too quick, and didn't really understand what that meant.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we're not trying to paint a negative picture of vendor.
I'm all for vendor. Woo.
Yeah, absolutely. For some businesses, it's just perfect. The distribution across different countries, the handling of more or less every stage of the purchasing process, but also, if you do have a vendor manager, or if you are an account of a certain size, having that foot in the door with Amazon is really important. And you sometimes do get access to different initiatives that sellers can't get access to. So that I think that's really kind of important to balance that out. But it's just making sure that you are set up correctly, and that you're not misled to think that one strategy is going to be the right one for you. As your business changes over time, you might look at another strategy as well further down the line.
Exactly. And I think there's the waters have been muddied in the past. The waters were muddied when Amazon had Vendor Express, because Vendor Express almost was a kind of Seller Central version of Vendor Central that people could use as self-service and get signed up to get access to all these additional A+ pages, sponsored ads, and all these things that are now available on Seller. So really, Vendor Central and Seller Central are really an even level playing field when you look at marketing tools, as long as you're a brand owner, because you can set up sponsored ads, you can create A+ content, you can create brand stores, and you've got Vine now as well, so you've got all these tools. So really, Amazon is actually making it very fair in a way. And then actually, when I speak with vendor managers, if we have a new client that wants to become a vendor, the questions that I'm asked from the new vendor management team that handle new clients is, well, what's their setup? Are they selling to major retailers in the UK? And if I say yes, then they're going to be interested, because that shows that they've got wholesale set up. If I say no, they don't, at the moment it's all direct to consumer, a lot of the time they'll say, well, carry on with seller, because actually the business isn't ready. So Amazon is being a lot more stricter in the sense, and this is what we're finding in Europe, not for the US. The US is even harder to have that conversation. But even Amazon are being very clear and almost fair with the two platforms, because I think they've realised that it just got a bit out of hand at one point, of people not really knowing the difference between the two.
Well, over 50% of sales come from third-party sellers on Amazon. That's a trend we've seen increase over the years. And of course, it's expensive for Amazon to run the vendor program, because They have to hire staff. That requires more office space, and really they're not looking to do that. Amazon is a frugal-based company. It's one of their leadership principles. They don't really want to be investing a ton in additional staff that they could potentially just automate parts of that process. So I think that's a really good point, Karina. And then kind of summarizing all this, what do we leave our listeners with to think about as a little note?
I mean, the biggest thing from my side is, well, there's a complexity, as in it's not a simple question that you're going to go and type into Google and Google's going to give you the answer. Because I know if you type in this question, should I be a vendor or seller? The amount of blog articles that come up is immense. And then it all looks at all these comparisons between, oh, well, if you sign up to this, you get A+ or Vine. And we've talked about that that's not really no longer really the case. But the reason why it's not such a simple answer is because it depends on your business setup. And it also depends on where you want the business to go, because your business might not be set up for vendor, for example, now, but that might be your end goal, is to start distributing to bricks and mortar, for example. So the real takeaway here from how I sort of see things between the two is making sure you're very clear on what your strategy is and making sure that it's aligned with your business goals and you know what you're jumping into. Because if you jump into too quick, it's going to burn you later on. At the same time, it's also making sure that you're very clear that you're spreading risk as well, because don't jump in and think that Amazon is your only answer.
I have nothing to add to that. I'm going to copy your answer and say spot on. And I think that's a good place for us to end. So that's episode 3 finished, because now we need to get back and top up our tea, coffee, whatever we're drinking. Of course, we encourage you to please like, share, comment on the videos. We want to start taking some questions, don't we, Karina, and start getting into the nuances of this discussion. But thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.